With that shameless plug out of the way, the last question I'm going to touch on here was asked by Connor over in the Tabletop OSG is, can you explain fusion and how it relates to the waste? Fusion, or the fusion system, is the equivalent of a spellcasting system in this game. Um, I don't have wizards and things like that because it's not really a fantasy, it's more of a sci-fi. But there's mad scientists and there's wizards or sorcerers in the sense of things like you would see in the old Flash Gordons or Dark Savages or Big Trouble in Little China, where people are tapping into some weird mystical aspect or something and casting spells and doing things. So in this case, a fusion is a spell and instead of casting spells, you manipulate fusions. And the waste that this relates to is a mixture of radioactive waste and subatomic particles and other things, radiation in the atmosphere of the world due to a previous nuclear war that happened during the timeline. This is all the residue and the waste that's still left over. But it also refers to something called the seventh in Fey lines. The seventh are sort of a invisible ghost-like creatures that exist within this world. Think of it in a real world as we are now, to the people who believe in ghosts and angels and demons and invisible type things like that. Aside from any religious aspects of stuff, I'm not going to get into that obviously, but those type of things do exist in this world. There's ghosts all over and stuff. And scientists don't necessarily know what they are or who they are, but they are very much real, and they've been proven through the documents and research and stuff like that. They're called the seventh. The seventh, in combination with the waste, the radioactive nuclear waste and stuff of the world, is what manipulators and scientists and other people use to manipulate the fusions. So they basically draw the energy and manipulate this toxic radiation waste and this living essence of the seventh to create spells that go off. This has created a sort of war, per se, between humanity, or what's considered humanity, and the seventh, which is a viable creature essence that is living consciousness. So people are basically destroying these creatures and this conscious to cast their own and use for their own abilities. It's further used in things like radiation panels and other odds and ends. So because this world doesn't have a sun as we know it, they have created what's called radiation or seventh panels. And they're sort of like a solar panel that draws radiation energy and energy from the seventh to power things, be it a whole cities or not. So whatever the seventh is, which is a whole different area to get into, but people are basically destroying it, killing them off to power themselves. Typical humanity sort of greed, but it has created a little bit of a rift between the two, obviously. Some want to integrate with humanity and become a part of it and work with humans and do things and make this world better. Other ones are just on a complete guerrilla strike force looking to kill, destroy, and do whatever they can to humans because humans are doing it to them. So it's this little side plotline war that is going on between humans and the seventh. So that's a little bit on when people go through and they manipulate fusions and they cast spells, they're taking that toxic residue and the energy from that, along with the life and the power of the seventh, and creating basically spells called fusions and doing different things. Let me find a spell here that I can read just to give a little bit of an idea for an example. So, so we have the Toxic Blast, okay? The whole spell system is, again, another topic for another time, but essentially, when you go to manipulate a fusion, you would roll a verve check depending on what the case. It might be just a simple verve check on your part to see if you can do it, or it might be a verve attack against an enemy to see if you can hit them with it. Toxic Blast, in this case, is an offensive type spell. So you have to choose a target, you choose a power, and then you make an attack against the target using verve, which is an ability score that you use for Vitus and for fusions. Depending on what you roll on that check, it might be a complete failure, which means you spend the points to cast a spell, but it doesn't go off. It just completely fizzles out, and you might take damage if it's a bad enough roll, all the way up to if you get an astounding success, which is like a critical success, to where the spell or this fusion goes off, and it is much more powerful and stronger than basic. You're just your basic fusion. So you're able to really grab a hold of all of this energy and focus it and do an excellent job, basically, casting this spell or fusion. So based on what you get, if you have an astounding success, you can make it so it costs less points to, because this does use a sort of a PowerPoint system to cast fusions, but you can make it cost less. You can make it so you do not take radiation damage, which is a little side effect that might come of casting fusions, or you can make it so the fusion has additional effects. So I'll give you a quick little read of this fusion just to give you a concept of how it works. So it's a corporeal bolt of toxic residue forms in the palm of your hand, and it is launched with incredible force at a target within range. It has a range of 6, which means 6 blocks. You choose a target, you choose your power, and then you make your attack against the target using verve. It'll be a range attack, so it's used just like your normal attack against the opponent, and they would have their dodge bonus included, whatever. On a success, the target takes 1d4 minus 1 damage per power. So you can only use enough power equal to your level. So if a level 5 character was manipulating this fusion, they could put in up to 5 points of power into this. And say they do put it at, a power 5. That means they would do 5d4 minus 1 damage for that power 5. They would roll their verve attack. If it's a failure, it does nothing. It costs them more. They might take a little bit of damage. If it's just your basic success, it just does that, plain and simple. Say they get an astounding success. With that, they can choose additional effects that this toxic blast has. They can increase the damage to 1d6 per power, so then it would do 5d6 damage. They could give the target a poisoned condition, which causes damage for every action that they take. They could deal an extra rank times 2 points of damage. So if they did it at a power 5, that means power basically times 2 is 10. So they would deal 5d4 minus 1 damage to start with, and then another plus 10 points of damage to it. And then, or the other option that they could have is the target gains the severed condition, which basically means that they are severed off from their Vitus and their Verve stat, which gives them different negative effects based on what it is they do or saves that they might take. So the better you're able to manipulate that fusion and do things, the better the spell's going to be, or the fusion in this case. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight. Maybe you get some more questions out of that. If you do, feel free to comment below, ask any questions or anything else that you guys might have. I'm here to answer questions. You guys have a great day and keep rolling those D20s.